Hi guys, I'm Natasha and welcome back to another episode of The Usual Place. Yes, we're still talking about Budget 2026, which Prime Minister Lawrence Wong unveiled on February 12th. Now, in a nutshell, the big headlines were Singapore will work towards becoming a global AI champion as a way to future-proof its economy, and there will be more support for lower-income families, low-wage workers, and seniors. So, what was the thinking behind these moves, and what does it all mean for businesses, workers, and you? So, to help me answer the post-budget questions, I have Ms. Indranee Rajah, Minister in the Prime Minister's Office and Second Minister for Finance. And you're back here again for the third time.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And welcome back to The Usual Place. And next to you on the couch, we have Professor Nathan Peng, Assistant Professor of Political Science at the Singapore Management University. And, well, this is your first time here. Thank you for coming on. And next to you, we have Mr. Gunasekharan Chellappan, co-chair of AI Cloud and Data Chapter for SGTech. Welcome to The Usual Place, all of you. And I want to start off with Minister. I want to know, what was the first reaction you got post-budget? What was the first text you got, or what were some of the early reactions you got after PM announced the budget this year?
I think one of the first initial reactions was, wow, there's quite a big emphasis on AI this year. I think that was because many of the other things were enhancements, and so people were fairly familiar with where we were going, but the AI piece was new, so that attracted a lot of attention.
Okay, was it like good reaction, like, okay, yay, we're going to be an AI nation, or is it like, oh no, where is this going with the AI
I think
thing?
It depends on who the person was, because some were very excited about it, and some were a little bit worried, and some were like, in between, like, I want to know more about it, I want to do more, but I'm not really sure how, and how is this budget going to help me?
Okay, so we'll get into AI in a bit, but I want to talk about what Singaporeans love to hear in the budget, which is CDC vouchers. Much anticipated goodie of the budget. And I think maybe some people might be a bit disappointed that we're getting fewer vouchers this year. So it will come in January 2027 at $500 for Singaporean households. So, Minister, I want to ask perhaps what a lot of people are thinking is, will these vouchers be a permanent feature of the budget? Give me the insight.
Okay, everybody loves CDC vouchers, right? So that's a given. But you need to have a look at how they came about and what we're doing with them. They came about during the COVID period, where really the economy was down, we had negative growth, everybody was very concerned about costs and how to manage. So it was initially introduced to help cope with COVID. And the fact that, incomes and the economy was affected. Then we had the inflation coming in with the global wars, etc. And so it then became more of a assistance with a combination of household assistance and assistance with inflation. And it was intended to do two things. One, basically to help households, but two, it's used in heartland shops to help the heartland shops. And after a while, people said, we do our grocery shopping in supermarkets, so can you extend to supermarkets? And so its evolution or its genesis was when times were bad, and everybody needed a lot of assistance. Since then, inflation has moderated, economy is doing much better, incomes have improved. So it makes sense that you have slightly less in terms of the CDC vouchers, but because we recognize that cost of living is still on people's minds, we still have a tranche, right, of CDC vouchers for next year, 500. At the same time, we've got to also make sure that there is that incomes continue to grow. So you'll find that this budget puts a lot of emphasis on the economy. So, if you can keep those two things in tandem, then make sure that you keep it in equilibrium.
Yeah. Well, on the other hand, you will have some people saying that, hey, the government's maybe being a bit too loose with the purse strings because giving out CDC vouchers to everybody then some people might not need it, right? So why keep it broad-based instead of narrowing support? I guess some people might answer.
Really good question. Because before CDC vouchers, a lot of it was very targeted. And that is the right thing to do, because those who need more help, lower income households, vulnerable families, those who have financial difficulties, they should get more help. But at the same time, there were others who were like, how come there's nothing for us, But you don't give just for that reason. The CDC vouchers were given, as I said, because of COVID to help all households, because all households were impacted, and all households were impacted by inflation as well. And we recognize that there's still some need for assistance. So don't forget, there's a whole range of other schemes. There's the GST vouchers. There is this additional subsidies that we give for low-income families. So yeah, it's a range. Some broad-based, some targeted.
So I want to ask Nathan, because this is your area. So looking at the measures to help the lower income group, which do you think helped the group the most? And was there something you hoped that would have been mentioned that you found was missing in the budget? Because I think caregivers were not specifically mentioned in this year's budget, and they're a growing group in Singapore as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think for me, the measures for the lower income groups come not just this year, right? So I think there were many, many measures announced in previous years, and as Minister have said, this come in a broad range. So I think Minister Chan Chun Seng used the term multiple lines of assistance before. So I think the one that would really help this year would be the Comlink Plus enhancements. That said, I also think that Comlink Plus, I think, serves a very select group of Singaporeans, and I think increasingly we hear on the ground that those in the middle are feeling a bit stretched because they neither really benefit from the expansion in our social assistance programs in the last 30 years, nor are they really able to catch the wave of economic growth that some of the higher income Singaporeans have enjoyed. So to me, the measures are really good and sound, but I think the question is, are they closing the gap sufficiently, or is the gap growing over time, especially the intergenerational gap?
So you're talking about this gap and social mobility as well. And just a few days before the budget, actually, the Ministry of Finance published an occasional paper about wealth and income inequality as well as social mobility. And it showed that relative intergenerational social mobility was slowing down as our economy matures. Now, I think some of us were perhaps expecting that in the budget that this part about wealth inequality and social mobility slowing down would be addressed. So, Minister, will we see more measures down the line to address this, or?
I think you will. This budget does address that. I'll explain how in a moment. But let's just backtrack. So, income inequality it's better, but wealth inequality that's widened a bit, and you can understand that's a understandable thing, because for families who have more wealth, more assets, the children benefit from that, right? You've got more resources, more access to whether it is enrichment programs, just exposure in general. So what we have to do is try to bridge that gap. And how do we do it? It goes back to the beginning, helping when the children are young, because all the research shows that, early childhood education sets you off in the right way. And if you can get people off on the right start, life outcomes down the road are much better. So this year's budget has got the enhanced Comlink Plus packages, and that is to help the more vulnerable families to be able to do better with jobs, have better housing, or move from rental to purchase flats so they have their own home, and basically assist them financially. That's going to help the children as well. Then don't forget that Comlink, all the Comlink centres, their role is to reach out to the lower income families, connect them with all the social assistance. Then we have programs in previous budgets like Uplift, which is also the MOE side of the house connecting with the social side. So we give financial assistance. MOE has a lot of remedial programs in schools, basically things to help them level up. Then for the older adults, there's the Skills Future Level Up. So that different measures at different life stages and targeted at different groups, but all aimed at helping to bridge that gap.
Nathan, hearing what Minister said, do you have any concerns perhaps from the low income group that maybe you think might need to be addressed more directly or in other ways?
Right. So in my own research, I have found that sometimes the macro numbers I think are very sound, and I think that's great because not many countries can say that our macro numbers show that wages for the lower income groups or the middle income groups are growing. So I think that's a really good point for Singapore. However, I also hear, and I think this was echoed by some of the other members of parliament after the budget as well, that some people don't feel that their lives have gotten 2.5% better, for example, and looking at what's the gap that we've been talking about and the gradually slowing social mobility, I do wonder, is there anything we can do to ensure that lower income children beyond early childhood years, that we kind of give them those resources to be able to compete on a more even footing with those from higher income families? Because I think what we are seeing is this weaponization of family wealth to translate that into merit through means like tuition or enrichment classes. And so that is something that I think a lot of us are quite concerned about.
That's a fair concern. And actually, what we have in place is all the building blocks for this. It's a question of how we can execute better. We can certainly do more programs, but let me just take, for example, right? First things first, when the child is born, greater access to infant care. And MSF has been looking to see how we can have better and more options for infant care. Then after that, it is childcare, and we have childcare subsidies. So this year's budget actually increases the threshold so more people can come. But the focus group for this has always been lower income families too, to make sure that the children have access to good preschool because that gives them foundation, right? Then the next thing is make sure that when they go to school, well, for this group, actually school is virtually free. And then all schools will have assistance funds that you can tap on, whether it's for enrichment. Then we have the self-help groups like SINDA, Mendaki, the CDAC for the Chinese community to help with tuition and other enrichment programs. So all the different elements, all aimed at trying to make sure that they can bridge that gap. So what you say is very fair, the concern. We have in place many of the things that will help, but it's really executing. For example, some still don't have enrollment into preschool. And so the preschool is there, the subsidies are there, but that gap is getting them to enroll into preschool. And then attendance in school, for example. The school and remedial programs are there. But if a child does not turn up in school, that's actually one of the single biggest factors in a child not doing well. And that was the purpose of Uplift, as well as the Compling centers, to make that connection, get the child into school. And once you're in the school environment, tap on all the other things which are available.
So I want to pick up on something that Nathan said, and I want to ask all of you what you think about it. So you mentioned that, sometimes the perception is that people feel that their lives aren't doing well, even if it looks like the economy is doing better, or is growing, right? So what can the government do about it? Like, where's this perception coming from? Yeah. Guna, do you have something to add to it?
I think if you look at it, generally in Singapore, everyone has a lot of perceptions, a lot of preconceived ideas. And like what Minister said, the programs are there, they are available, but somehow the messaging doesn't connect. So the Uplift program, as whether it's the MOE or the Compling Center, as they reach out to the individual and help them pull them into a center, then they can benefit from it. Sometimes it's not just about communicating, it's the realization that those programs are there and they can help. Because it is a perception that income divide is getting wider, wealth is becoming worse, and as a low-income family or a middle-income family, I feel that I'm getting left out of the success that Singapore is seeing. It's got to do with the foreigner, it's got to do with everybody else but me. But so I think the key challenge is, like I said, how do you reach out to the individuals, share with them that piece?
Nathan, when you're talking to middle-income family, when you're talking to Singaporeans and their needs and what they worry about, what about the middle income? What families? What are they saying about this?
So I think it's a lot about, firstly, what Guna said about positionality, right? Am I in a good position to kind of capture some of these global trends? Or for example, AI. Am I in a position to make use of AI to better my own life? And if they feel that I am not, in fact, if I'm in a position where I feel that things can only go downhill, where the number of jobs will shrink in my particular sector. So they may feel more vulnerable. So they don't feel that, even though in the past few years, my real income has increased, right? Even accounting for inflation, but I am now feeling more vulnerable. And I think the future, and this is something that as Singapore, I think we are price takers, does look a lot more uncertain compared to before. So because of that, they might feel, even though, I have saved up, even though I have all these resources now, I still feel like I cannot provide a secure future for my children. So because of that, they feel the need to do everything they can to give their children an advantage. And I think that is the root of not just these feelings of anxiety, but also sometimes it's a race, right, of government resources versus private resourcing of children's education. And it's a very, very tough race because Singaporeans are very well off. And the household consumption reports do show that not only are higher income groups spending more in absolute terms, they are spending more as a proportion of their salary on things like private tuition. So to me, all these adds up to that feeling of anxiety.
So I want to ask Minister, what do you think the government can do beyond, I guess, policies or providing money, and how do we get over this anxiety that Nathan's talking about?
I think the most important thing is to understand that for this government, we want to make sure that Singaporeans are able to do well. And you have that assurance that that is the government's commitment. And if you think about what we've been doing in the last 10, 15 years in education, we have broadened the pathways so that it doesn't really matter so much your starting point, but no matter where you start, you should be able to land up where you want to be. Whether you go to ITE, Poly, JC, university, you have the chance to land up where you eventually, whatever aspirations it is. In the past, it was more difficult because if you went to ITE, then you had a NITEC and it was expected that you would go out and work with that NITEC qualification. Now, you go to ITE, you could have an ITEC, you have the option to go and work, or you could, even in ITE, advance to a diploma for certain subjects, like automotive, for example. Or you could go to a poly and have a poly diploma, and then you can go out and work, or you can go on to university if you want. And don't forget, in a previous budget, we had given the ITE Progression Award, where so long as an IT student progresses on, gets a diploma, government puts up $10,000 into their CPF, and that's to help them with their housing journey. So you can see we've been creating all these different opportunities. We subsidize housing as well, and then at the same time try to make sure that the economy grows so that Singaporeans have good jobs, and make sure that our Singaporeans continue to be skilled through the Skills Future program. So I guess, in short, don't worry so much. So long as it's this government, we will do our best to create different pathways, and whatever the challenges are, we'll do it together. Hence, we first, which is also a part of this budget.
Right. So I mean, AI has kind of been brought up, and it kind of fits into the whole social mobility conversation as well. So I want to go there, and because this was a big thing in the budget as well, and we're definitely going there. We're going to be an AI-led society, but these sort of big changes can also lead to structural inequality, especially when people get left behind. So I want to open it out to all three of you, and then find out what you think about this. Maybe Guna, we can start with you.
I think while we look at the next evolution of the economy, the country, and how AI will be part of it, which is what a lot of people picked up from the budget announcement. But you really have to look at AI as not as a technology. AI has been around for the longest time. Whether you are inside a supermarket or whether you're in a bank, you have been using AI for different angles. The key difference is what has happened now is just, in fact, AI has become easier to use, easier to learn. And because of that change, as someone put it simply, it's like all of a sudden in the last 2-3 years, a computer can speak English. If you look back a few years ago, technology was limited to the few who knew how to do programming, and therefore the enablement or the skills required to be able to touch AI was quite prohibitive. You had to go into a technology course to get there. But now with the new Gen AI and all of this, it's just become a lot simpler. So a very common person, regardless of low income, high income, middle income, anybody can actually learn to do AI. And it's not just English. Even models have been built. It is easy for even to use non-English language to do this. So in a way, AI would, in my opinion, just like education, Minister, I totally agree with you. Education is the greatest leveler that we have in Singapore from the 70s. I came from a very low income family. Through education and through skills, I became successful. Right? So likewise, I would say that in the next generation, the next phase, incorporating AI into the education, and that piece would then become the greater leveler of the disparity that we potentially face, making it easier for lower income, middle income families to be able to cross the divide.
You're very optimistic. I know some people might think AI is this boogeyman kind of thing, but because how do I use it? Where do I start? I mean, Nathan, do you agree with Guna or with me, Debbie Downer, about AI?
I totally agree that the pie is growing. But I think there is also the reality of limited opportunities. That a lot of our undergraduates, because these are the students I'm talking to and teaching at Singapore Management University, the number of jobs, the good jobs that they are all gunning for, those are limited. So it's about how one person does relative to another. So I totally agree that AI has made certain aspects of education a lot more accessible. Unfortunately, I think in the US, we also see evidence that parents with better digital skills are better able to make use of such technologies to give their children an edge. So for example, I think in Singapore, we see this phenomenon that should totally be avoided. So those watching, if you are doing this, please stop. So E-nannying, right? Giving their children an iPad and then just letting them. So AI could engage the child, that's true. But the evidence is if the parent engages a lot more intentionally, right, to teach them digital skills through that interaction with technology, that actually helps. So that again, even though AI has made things more accessible, even that access has a tinge of inequality, where those with better skills in the beginning are, able to get their children up to a higher standard of know-how compared to those whose parents do not have those skills.
Minister, do you think? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to jump in here to say that, to your question, actually we've been here before. We've been here before. Because every time technology introduces something new, at the onset, it's uncomfortable. People are asking about it, not quite sure. But slowly you get to use it, adopt it, then you become comfortable and becomes mainstream. You don't think about it. So just think about email. That's back to the 90s, right? And of course, I think for some of the younger generations, was there ever a world before email? But there was a world before email. When I started work, it was, you were actually still typing on typewriters with the typewriter ribbon. It was only when I'd been working for a few years that you had the typewriter that had just a few words of text. And then eventually they became word processors and so on. So with email, there was a time when we didn't have it. And when it first came about, adoption was slow. Some people were tentative, a bit afraid of it. But eventually more and more people started using it. And then with the iPhone, you had convergence. So it was email together with your phone and eventually a camera. And now people cannot do without their smartphones. And even young kids use smartphones almost instinctively. So we're kind of like at that early stage of email with AI. It's still new, still exploring, still a little bit, tentative. But I would imagine that if we continue with this, after a while, it'll just become normal. The other example is digital payments. Do you remember when SM Lee, when he was PM, mentioned at one National Day rally that there will come a time when we can just do payments from our phone? Then the whole audience was like, yeah, okay, that'll be like, decades away. But within a few years, boom, everybody was on PayNow or PayLah. So we're kind of like at that stage.
How do you see AI being a leveler for, different income groups, or do you think it will exacerbate inequality?
It could exacerbate it if we're not careful and we're not intentional about the way we roll it out. But it can be a great leveler if we do it right. And so it's very important to make sure that every Singaporean, especially and including those from lower income families, have access to it, are well educated in its use and know how to use it properly. The last thing you want is AI substituting human judgment, human discernment, and human thought? I mean, the worst thing would be just to ask AI for an answer. It gives you an answer, and you just use that without thinking about it. So we have to be taught at an early age how to use it ethically, morally, and thoughtfully.
So that's a good segue to talk about the anxieties we have about AI. And I think when we are listening to the budget, there's this sense that there is anxiety about jobs. What happens to Singaporean workers who are made redundant because AI has taken my job, right? I mean, that's always kind of like the conversation that we're having. And we have seen layoffs in tech companies because AI has taken over some roles. And broadly, in a report by the World Economic Forum last year, they noted that the trends in AI and information processing technology are expected to create 11 million jobs. But then at the same time, it will displace 9 million others. So there's only like a 2 million job creation here. So, Guna, I want to ask you, what's your thoughts about, this whole, will AI come for my job?
Will AI come for my job? Yes. The question is that the challenge here, or the question here, is really the jobs. So upskilling without job redesign is not good. Like if you are a fresh graduate, you go for training and you see the world, wow, it's going to change. But the jobs didn't change. So you will get very anxious. I've gone through the training. I feel that there's so many things can be done. And first thought would be, my job is going away. But if you bring the employers and the business into the conversation with job redesign, then you can actually minimize the anxiety, because the people will understand that these skills that I have and this job would fit very well. So it is a combination, right? It's not just purely upskilling. This is upskilling with job redesign, because what will come out of the end of this conversation is that there would be better quality jobs. There would be different jobs, slightly different, but it will have a job for everyone. So whether you're a fresh graduate, you're a mid-level person, or even a very senior. In fact, if you really look at it, with AI, it's not just about technology, even though technology has become easier to adopt, but there's also a lot of domain expertise required. So senior workers, for example, who have expertise in the business and the processes, can actually help the companies and the organization transform, because I'll bring technology and job redesign, or the industry expertise of that company, together to be able to work on that transformation. And as you do that thing together, it also creates new opportunities. For example, fractional employment. Right? So there's this whole gig economy and fractional employment that's picked up a lot of momentum. So everyone wants to be able to work at their own pace, especially if you're a senior worker, whatever age then you choose to retire. Doesn't mean you actually get out of the workforce, but rather you could still provide domain and process skills on a highly automated job. Then therefore you can continue to contribute. So Singapore, with our aging population, that actually helps us ensure that a larger portion of the workforce is continuously engaged in our economy rather than getting cut off at a particular point in time. So my view, AI actually going to help the economy. Yes, there will be organizations that, due to lack of understanding or have a high optimism of what AI is going to do, there would be initial structural changes that they are not able to cope with. But as job redesign comes in, I think we'll see the changes coming in. And I'm quite optimistic that, again, maybe, like you said, I'm optimistic about it. Generally, with job redesign, you'll see a lot more things changing, and you'll see more employability, better quality jobs back for Singaporeans. That should address some of our national concerns as well.
Can I ask you, what is fractional employment? Is this when they... is it a
it's
new
like gig
term?
economy.
Okay, so it's basically working on your own time.
Yeah, just that I may need to be, let's say I'm a marketing guy or I'm a finance person, I don't have to be fully employed with one company. I've got strong expertise. I'll come in for a few hours a day to do certain things. So you don't have to hire a full-time finance guy. You don't have to hire a full-time legal guy. You don't have to hire a full-time person. But because you have the experience, the processes, because again, a lot of people do think that AI will replace everything, but it is not going to replace everything. There will be certain jobs that become highly automated, but a lot of times AI is going to augment what we do. So especially decision making, right? If you want to be able to automate for productivity gains, great, but there's always accountability behind it. And with every AI, key thing is trust. Do I trust the outcome? Do I trust what this chatbot or this application results going to be? And there will always be a human in the process. So that human in the process is going to help do this. And I think trust is the fundamental piece of it. And therefore, for a very, very long time, there's going to be a human in the process, adding the trust and the accountability to the conversation, right? And I think Singapore government generally recognized way early. I've been working with one of the government agencies, IMDA, on a AI Verify program, which is how do you actually test AI for bias? How do you test AI to ensure there's proper governance in place? Just to make sure the AI doesn't go rogue on you and suddenly this becomes Terminator or some crazy movie, right? So we've seen it.
So, I mean, going back to the displacement of, what Guna said about how, we can use it in good ways, but there will still be this anxiety about, I might lose my job. So how will the government, quell that?
I think so long as the anxiety is channeled in a positive way. So you should have some anxiety, because if in an AI-enabled world, you're going through life thinking, okay, I can do everything as before. I don't have to worry at all. I don't have to think about it. Then that's also not a very good approach to take, because suddenly you may find that your job has changed, sector has changed, and you're the only one that's left out because others are able to hop on board. So I think a sort of a healthy concern, as opposed to unwarranted anxiety, is the way to go. And what shape or form should that concern take? I think it should take this form. What is AI? Do I know how to use it effectively? If I don't, how can I address this? And one answer will be Budget 2026. Please go look at Budget 2026 and see, because we're having like 6 months free access for certain AI tools for some AI skills future courses. How can I improve my skills and do better in my work? So that's the sort of conversation need to be having. And the other thing is to remember that some jobs the sector will remain. Let me give a non-AI example. Construction. In the past, if you were building something, do you remember those big cement mixers that we used to see when we were younger? Have you noticed you don't see so many of them now? And what is the reason? The reason is because we're no longer mixing concrete on site. The concrete is actually now, a lot of our construction is precast. So the concrete is being done in the factory. And whereas before you would have to actually shape the concrete on the building site, now it's shaped in the factory, and you bring the entire wall with the window already cut out and you set the wall there. But we still have construction. And in the past, you needed the workers to do the mixing of the concrete on site. Now you need people who are in factories doing some of that digitally. You need the workers in the field to set the precast concrete in place. You need people to lift the cranes, the cranes to lift the concrete pieces. So construction hasn't gone away. The jobs are still there, but the way you do the jobs and the skill sets for that job have changed. So that's one. The other thing is that AI may very well create new jobs, which didn't exist before. And perhaps one example that is easier to understand is, once you had the internet and once you had digital, suddenly came along a new asset, which was data. In the 1980s, 1990s, and even in the 2000s, we didn't think of data as an asset in itself. But by the 2010s, data analytics became the big thing. And data suddenly became something to be bought and sold. So that was created by the fact that you had the whole digital evolution, and it created something which has now spawned off an entire industry of data analysts, which didn't exist in the 2000s. So AI will do that. It will create new jobs, which today we aren't even aware of.
Well, does the government have a sensing of the numbers of how many jobs will be redesigned or how many jobs will be made redundant?
It's early stages yet, but that's the other reason why Budget 2026, PM announced the setting up of the National AI Council, which he will be chairing, to provide strategic direction and to look at which sectors we should be investing in and building up. And that's why we have the AI missions. So AI missions would basically mean we're looking at sectors where we should use more of AI experiment. This includes areas of finance, connectivity and logistics, healthcare as well. And healthcare is interesting because, to Guna's point, right? Healthcare is a very people-oriented sector. You're never going to not have people in that sector. We have an aging population. But how can we use AI to make it easier and better? And that's definitely something which will grow. And there will still be jobs for human beings because you're dealing with elderly, with people who are not well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I want to find out how will we decide which tasks will be replaced by AI. I mean, as you mentioned correctly, I think some people are worried that we will lose the human connection, and not just in the medical field, but I don't know, maybe even in well, right now there are the 4 areas that we're focusing on. So there's healthcare, and then manufacturing, and
Advanced manufacturing.
and transport connectivity.
Yes.
And finance, right?
Yep.
Yeah. How do we?
Not transport, connectivity and logistics.
Okay. Yes, manufacturing, connectivity, finance, and logistics. Yes.
Because of our port and sea operations.
Yes. So how do we not lose the human connection there? Like, how will we say, like, okay, this can be done by AI, but a person will be...
I think Guna will be able to give you a deeper insight onto that.
Yes.
Yeah, but anything that's actually highly automated, in terms of repetitive, right? If it's a highly repetitive kind of work, yes, it definitely can be automated. Second is things that process. You do your piece of work, she does a piece of work, he does a piece of work. The connectivity between the people, the process can also be automated. And there would be kind of work which is analytical in nature. You're analyzing data, summarizing data, so you don't have to troll through 20 pages of information just to get the gist of it. So those pieces will be automated. But where it comes down to, like I said, is it just productivity gain? Is there accountability behind it? Is there trust behind it? So if I look at these 3 angles, work that requires accountability tends to still be human in the loop. Things where the trust in the process, still have a human piece of it. So the human in the loop will always continue to be there. The question is that how much of that human effort, and that's where the job redesign comes in, new roles will be created, healthcare will change, but there'll still be a person, a doctor talking to you. Just that you wouldn't have to wait 15 minutes or 30 minutes to see the doctor, because the doctor would have gotten the summaries, the gist of the X-ray or the MRI to him so that he can quickly engage with you, have a conversation about what is the right treatment plan, for example, in that healthcare specific scenario. So those tasks will be automated, but on the other flip side, there will always be a human to help ensure the interaction, the engagement, the trust, and the accountability is there.
You could always ask your AI to do your diet plan for you, your health plan. And then when it comes up with something, you look at it and refine it, revise it. But you still need to think about it, right? Because it may suggest things which may not actually be good for you.
I mean, AI has a tendency to hallucinate, so you always need to check what AI is writing for you.
That's right.
I mean, so we have seen some downsides of AI, and I mean, Nathan, I want to get your view about the social impact that we might need to consider when we go like full on AI in society.
I think as an educator, my main fear, or the main downside that I fear is, and I think I mentioned this before, is the shortcutting of skill building processes that I think, as Minister has mentioned, they're not thinking through some of these things, right? They are not being accountable. They are not basically putting in any intellectual effort into generating some of these things. And I think while summarizing might be seen as a not very high value add skill, but ultimately the ability to sift through information quickly, summarizing in your mind and picking out what is important, even that skill in itself is very valuable. So my fear is that by allowing AI to do some of these things so that they can focus on other parts of it, they actually lose very important skill sets that actually might be able to let them use AI better, right? And because of that, they might actually become less competitive in the long run, because they are no longer building those skills. So if in another country, for example, maybe that they haven't had AI as quickly as us, but they develop those skills first, and then AI comes in, and then suddenly, AI becomes a much stronger complement to what they already have.
Actually, just to add to that, I think a lot of studies have shown is that introducing AI or technology at very early childhood is actually a disadvantage, because everyone needs to build social skills, critical thinking skills, summarization skills. I still remember doing book summaries when I was in school. You need to do all of that. Yes. Then technology becomes the enabler as you move forward. So there is a reason why you do see some developing countries are able to kind of leapfrog ahead, because they've built the fundamental core skills within the people, and then AI or technology became the enabler. So we need to always be mindful that there is a piece where outside of the classroom, using tools like technology is actually to take that digital piece out and then focus on people building, people skills building, and then introduce technology to be the enabler and not vice versa.
That's very important. MOE is very mindful of that. And so, it must always be remembered that AI is a tool. It shouldn't be telling you what to do. You should be using it in order to achieve what you want to achieve.
I mean, I hate to ask this question about what will the government do, but about because what he's saying is like, should there be some sort of no, not what he's saying, but what I'm hearing you say, and then I'm thinking like, should there be some sort of like regulation? Will we see more regulation in terms of like perhaps screen time for kids, which we're already kind of like getting there, right? And then at certain levels, AI ethics, and then there's more laws that will come into play. Do you think that we will be at that level just to regulate our AI society?
We will have to do it at all levels because we certainly have said in budget that AI regulation will be one of the things that will be looked at. So government can look at the regulation, government can look at policies. The teachers, when they teach in school, will be mindful of this. But parents also, adults in how they use it themselves to be mindful, but parents when they teach their children to be mindful also, businesses in the application. So it's not just only the government, it's going to have to be how across the board, how we approach this. Government can set direction, set regulations, give warning signs or warning signals, put issues out for discussion, have some policies, but execution, thinking about it has to be at each individual level.
Do you worry we're going to be bots? I mean, like strong AI prompters. I do worry. I think because when I did an episode about talking to a university student, a university student was on the show, and he was talking about how all his friends use ChatGPT. They do it even for like basic things like where do I eat, right? Yeah. So I'm just like, oh no. I mean, now that we're just going full on with AI, then what kind of society will we be?
No, but even if we use ChatGPT to say where do I eat, it doesn't take away the fact that after that, now you've identified the place, you go and meet your friends and you have social interaction with them. And then you'll have a lot to say about the food and you'll either enjoy it or not. And there was still the chef in the kitchen who was making that food. I don't know whether or not he might have used AI to help him with his menu, but that human activity is still taking place. So that's how societies advance.
You just have to blend it better,
yes,
and not let it take over.
That's right.
Okay, I will not have a meltdown right now. But okay, so the other anxiety that people may have is that how unenvironmentally friendly AI could be. Because right now the energy grid, I think, is not green enough to support the massive power use, and it uses a lot of water to cool the servers, straining, and it puts the strain on resources. How does this gel with Singapore's push to be climate forward and what we're doing to protect ourselves from climate change? And then now we want to be an AI forward country. I think, Minister, how will we fix this? Or how will we make sure that both aims come together?
Well, it's not just AI. There will be many other things that put demands on energy here in Singapore, and we are energy constrained. So we've made sustainability a very key part of our policies. We had the SG Green Plan. We are looking at renewable energy in a big way. So the key thing is this: energy we'll always need. What is important is that we continuously strive towards clean energy and renewable energy, or things like waste to energy. So basically, avoid putting more carbon in the air. So long as you have clean energy, then you can use it, and you may still have a lot of power that needs to be used, but at least it's generated in a clean way. And so in previous budgets, we've talked about how we are exploring or looking at nuclear energy to see whether that is a potential source. But definitely waste to energy is something that we've been pursuing as well. You need to make sure that your sustainability initiatives go in tandem with our AI ambitions.
Guna, do you have anything to say about this?
I think the approach has been balanced. I think the government is very clear that there will be some short-term trade-offs of what we want to achieve on AI versus the green. And I think the government has always been balanced. SGTech does have a data center committee that actually has given recommendation to the government in terms of public-private partnership with respect to how you do contracting for green energy, etc. But that being said, again, we can explore all different forms of technology, and where it is most energy intensive is actually right at the back end of AI. If we really want to be AI economy, we will never be the big data center country. We really need to make sure that our AI workforce is using AI. People are using innovative technology. People are building new innovative solutions. And we have always been a service economy. And therefore, we build AI into our products and our services that we offer, whether it's our financial markets, our logistics, shipping industry, where we are already known. So being able to export this new AI-enabled technologies and industry is more important than just being an AI data center country. So we can kind of skirt the green piece of it, with where the power question comes in, and try to focus on building the industries, the companies that Singapore will be known for.
So I want to end off with this question about what's the best way that employees can make sure that they take the right AI course, because the government's going to pay for 6 months premium AI tools, right, if they take a relevant course. So how do we make sure that people are taking the right courses versus, say, taking it for fun, as we're seeing some people do with the Skills Future? Stuff like, how do we make sure that everyone's positioned so that they don't get left behind?
Just like everyone had a $500 expiry in December, everyone rushed to take a class, in whatever class it was. And that kind of led to some anxiety, right? But take a course that's relevant to your job. And that's the fundamental thing. If you're a finance person, take something that's related to finance. That will probably be most helpful to you. But there is a second side of the coin, which I think is still at the moment now is missing, is the job redesign. Engaging the organization. So SGTech has been running the AI Impact Series for companies, etc. So we've touched maybe about 200 companies, which is still small. But I think we really need to focus not just on providing the people with the tools or even the right tools, but more importantly, also helping organizations change the way they do their business, their jobs. And I think I was very happy to see the AI Council being set up. I think it's good. But I think that could have, SGTech representing the tech industry, I think the tech industry would be very happy to work with the AI Council to try and look at how the job redesign piece, how the tech companies can come in and contribute back to the success of Singapore by working with the government to look at both the businesses as well as the people side of things.
Nathan, I want to ask you how, from a social perspective, how can people not be left behind in this as we move forward as an AI economy, AI-led economy?
I think that's a very difficult question, because right now we are not really sure what kind of jobs it will create, and the dust has not quite settled on what processes we are willing to let go of as societies and which we are not. And sometimes it might not be a choice, right? Because it's an interaction between the businesses and the consumers, like this negotiated outcome of what does get used by AI and what does not in the end. So it's very hard for me to say what they can do. But I think by and large, I think what the budget has mentioned as well is that we should get ourselves at least in the know. And as Guna has mentioned, you need to understand your own job, your own processes, so that you can understand what kind of AI training might be helpful. And so positioning ourselves in a place where our skills would always be in demand, I think that's the best way to go. That said, I think I'm a bit pessimistic that not everyone will be able to do that, unfortunately. And while we are adjusting, I think there'll be real consequences for the families. So this is something I personally am worried about.
I think it'll be interesting to see what conversation we have in Budget 2036, where you look back 10 years and see how far did we come in those 10 years. Because even today, looking back to 2016, you'll see how far we've come since 2016 in terms of online adoption, digital, and so on, right? So like I said earlier, we're at the beginning of that AI journey, and so much can happen within 5-10 years. So in 10 years' time.
I will see you. Well, I want to ask you to round us off by telling us, what do you hope people will take away from the budget, this year's budget?
What I hope people will take away from Budget 2026 is that it's really positioning us for the future in a changed world. And that's the reason for that budget title, because this is not the sort of budget with a lot of amazing fireworks and flash and bang, but it is a very deliberate, steady, targeted, focused budget to set Singapore off in the right direction, make sure that we empower our workers, keep our households and individuals supported as we go along, stay steady on our course for sustainability, and make sure that we have enough fiscal firepower to be able to do this.
All right. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
I will see you maybe in 20, 30 seconds. Maybe we'll be replaced by bots or AI. But thank you very much for being here. And that's it from The Usual Place today. And if you're watching us on YouTube, do subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you won't miss new episodes of the podcast. If you have thoughts on what we just discussed today, do drop a comment on YouTube or talk to me on Instagram at The Usual Place Podcast. I'll see you the following Thursday at noon. For now, happy Chinese New Year.